Back to the Future, one of the most popular 80s franchises ever. And I'm going to be talking about all three movies at once to get my perspective on all three of them. And there's a chance of me going into spoiler territory. So, if you haven't seen the movies, I would suggest watching all three of them. Alright, let's get to the intro. The story begins with young teenage Marty McFly, who lives in the future times, who hangs out with Dr. Brown, who makes incredible inventions, including the time machine or the DeLorean. At some point in the movie, Marty and Dr. Brown decide to test out their machine. But unfortunately, in the middle of their testing, Dr. Brown gets killed, so Marty, while traveling back in time, goes back in time to when his parents were his age. And he meets up with his mom and makes her love him. It's kind of creepy to think about. But anyway, let's continue with the story. In the past, Marty meets his father as well, and defends his father by punching the local bully. They have a big old chase off, and that's basically it. And then he meets up with Dr. Brown, or should I say, Dr. Brown from the past, to help him fix the time machine and get him back to the future, which I'm pretty sure is 2015, if I'm remembering right. But that doesn't mean his actions had consequences. You see, at some point in the movie, he accidentally saves his father from getting hit by a car, not knowing it was him. And it ends up making him slowly fade away and ruining his parents' relationship. So he has to try to get them back together, or he will be erased out of existence. And he does everything he can, including playing at the concert while bullies are chasing him. And basically the end, Doc Brown helps Marty get back to the future, but in helping his family in this movie, he fixes or changes some things about it. His father is now all macho, where before he was a nerd. Nothing wrong with nerds, but he couldn't stand up for himself. And then it ends with a cliffhanger about Marty and his girlfriend's children. So then it ends with a to be continued sign. As I said before, this is a whole trilogy, so we will be going through all three of them. So now, let's get to Back to the Future 2 takes place where the last Back to the Future left off, where Doc Brown, Marty, and Marty's girlfriend go to the future to change their children's future. And Doc Brown, after traveling to the future, explains to Marty that his son, Marty McFly Jr., becomes a criminal. There's something about the daughter as well, but I forget what he said about the daughter. Doc Brown gives a disguise to Marty, so Marty can pose as Marty McFly Jr. to prevent what happens to him ever happening. And in the process of this, we find out that Marty Jr. is a wimp. And then we have the whole big chase scene after Marty McFly Jr. comes into, I think it's like a restaurant, I'm pretty sure. Then Marty McFly Jr. gets confronted by the future bullies, which one of them is the grandson of the bully from the first Back to the Future movie. And they have their big chase scene. Then, the bullies crash through the clock tower. And then Marty picks up a pamphlet full of winning lottery numbers and bets throughout history, and Doc Brown takes it from him, throwing it in the trash because if Marty did something like this, it could affect the time stream and change things. But when Doc Brown was telling Marty this, the old bully guy took the thing from the trash, took the DeLorean at some point, traveled to the past and changed things, and then when Marty goes back, he is in an alternate timeline where the bully becomes the richest man in history and has his mom as his wife or something like that, and that would make Marty and his siblings his stepkids. At one point, Marty even goes to his old house where it is invaded by different people, where it got to the point where they had to call the cops on him. And Marty meets up with Dr. Brown, which in the newspapers, Dr. Brown is insane and is in a mental hospital. So then Marty and Doc Brown figured out that they need to go back in time before he got the pamphlet of all the winning lottery and bets. We also get to figure out that the bully killed his father in this timeline, which then Doc Brown and Marty go back in time. They go back all the way where the first Back to the Future led up to, which Doc Brown mentions that you shouldn't interact with the past versions of yourself. Dr. Brown had a really close call because he did run into his past self. Marty and the bully try to get the pamphlet, and each time they have failed. Near the end, Marty gets the pamphlet, which again, the bully runs into what the movie is so popular about: manure! Yay! Not. Which we get that line again: I hate manure. Then we get to see Marty and Doc Brown planning to go back to the future where everything is fixed. And then, before that, Marty burns the pamphlet so the bully can't go after it and no one else can have it. And then Doc gets struck by lightning, and Marty is stuck in the past, where eventually Dr. Brown sent him a letter in the future telling him he's in the Old West, and he said Marty shouldn't worry about him and he should continue with his normal life, and he's fine where he is, which is the Old West. But Marty decides to do the exact opposite of what Dr. Brown says, and Dr. Brown from the past, who launched Marty from the past, was there celebrating his victory of getting the Marty from the past back to the future. And then he sees another Marty, and Dr. Brown's like, but I sent you back. And Marty's just like, I'm back from the future. Then Dr. Brown faints. Ooh, cliffhanger! What's gonna happen next? Here we are. The last Back to the Future movie in the trilogy. Back to the Future 3. So this movie takes place where the last Back to the Future left off, where to meet up with the past Dr. Brown that was setting the past Marty McFly to the future. And for a while, Marty stayed with Dr. Brown until they discovered another DeLorean that Dr. Brown had created. And they send that thing back in time during the Old West so he can save future Dr. Brown from dying at the hands of the bully's ancestor. And yes, another bullyish character in the Back to the Future, and it's the same actor. Okay, this is getting kind of annoying how they use the same actors for Marty's family and the bully's family. It's kind of annoying. He eventually meets up with future Dr. Brown, and while Marty and him are catching up, they see a woman falling to her death, but Dr. Brown saves her from death, which also messed up the time stream. Good job, Doc. Not saying that's a bad thing, but she was supposed to die. But it doesn't really matter because it's mentioned later that the woman who Dr. Brown saved was supposed to die, and their school mentions her in an old story. Then later, Dr. Brown and Marty were working on the new DeLorean, but then they were invited to a party which Doc Brown and Marty go to eventually, which they actually take a picture by the clock where they actually struck lightning to. I'm like, okay, that's a good homage. But then the cowboy bully people, yes, I'm calling them, because A, I forget the Western villain's name, and B, I don't want to keep calling it like the bully character's ancestors' gang. So, yeah, we're calling them cowboy people. So the cowboy people interrupt the party trying to kill Mr. Brown, but then they end up starting a duel. And we get the joke when the cowboys say, "High noon," as all the cowboy movies do, but they make fun of it a bit by saying, actually, no, we're doing this at this time. No, we're actually doing that another time. Which is weird because wouldn't the officer or whatever arrest them before they did any of those crimes? They admitted it clean. That would be a perfect time to take them down. Granted, they would have probably died, but anyway, let's move on. Before I forget, the one who is going to be standing up to these cowboys is Marty, because Marty gets called a chicken, which Doc Brown mentions later that you need to stop overreacting to stuff like that, or what happens to you in the future will still happen, or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And Marty's like, wait, what? I actually forgot to mention this in the Back to the Future too. It turns out that in the future, Marty McFly turns into a huge coward like his father. Man, what's up with this family turning into cowards for some reason? After the party, they start working on the DeLorean, which needs to actually be pushed by a train since there is no electronics in the Old West. And they wanted to try to get out before the duel happened. But before they go, Doc Brown tries to bring his love interest with him, but she assumes he's a big old liar and breaks his heart. And then Doc Brown decides to go with Marty. And then the next day, or pretty sure later, Marty has his duel, which everyone is counting on him. They're like, everyone counts on you. So, and before his duel, he sees a depressed, drunk Dr. Brown, where he even passes out. They even had to make a type of drink. I think they called it a wake-up drink. And it just burst out, waked him up. Well, not completely, but it just did that, and then he fell asleep again. And then they had their duel, which Marty gets shot, but gotcha! He had a metal plate on because I think he was inspired by something in the past. I think it was like an Old West movie. And then he defeats the cowboy bully, I'm gonna call him that. Then, before or after that happened, Dr. Brown's love interest, it feels bad and decides to go back. No, it was after, I'm pretty sure, because they were robbing that train. And then Marty and Doc Brown head off and steal the train, which his love interest decides to get on while it's moving. Not the best idea, but who cares? After the DeLorean powers up a bit, because the DeLorean needs power of train tracks and a big amount of speed to get the DeLorean to travel to the future. Then Doc Brown hears his love interest and he goes by her and helps her try to get to the other side. And then eventually Marty gets enough power and he heads all the way back to the future. Back, I'm pretty sure 2015 in this movie's timeline. And then a train comes and destroys the DeLorean. And it's all over. The end. Nah, I'm just kidding. Then he meets up with his girlfriend or something like that, or I forget. Did that happen after? Then there was a big race that happened, which Marty tricked them. And then I'm pretty sure the movie ends with Marty and his girlfriend looking over the leftover pieces of the DeLorean. And then Doc Brown comes in a time-traveling train. Yes, he has another time-traveling machine. And he has a wife and kids, which I guess it's a satisfying ending. A bit questionable because Doc Brown kind of looks old, but granted, his love interest is from the past, so what do I know? Then the movie ends with the DeLorean train, or as I say, time-traveling Thomas the Tank Engine. I regret that joke. Doc Brown travels through the train, and the end. That's the end of the Back to the Future trilogy. Now let's get to our final conclusion. So in conclusion, the first two were great, in my opinion. Granted, there are some flaws with the second one. With all of them, they kind of follow the same concept of, they go back in some time area, meet up with the bully. Marty runs away and does a big chase scene, and the movie ending with I hate manure. But the second one kind of changed things up. To fix the time stream from the bully manipulating the time stream to make himself a billionaire, I felt like it was a bit original. Where the third one kind of felt off to me. Who knows, maybe there is someone who likes Back to the Future 3. I know it's not me, to be honest. So, tell me what you guys think of all these movies in the comments. And if you like this video, but make sure to press the like button if you liked today's video, and subscribe if you also liked the video. And comment how you felt about all three movies. If it's like a rating, like Back to the Future gets 5 stars, Back to the Future gets 4 stars, and like Back to the Future 3 gets 3 stars. Just tell me what you think of the movie, and if there's any missing details that I missed about the concept of all 3 Back to the Future movies, please tell me in the comments. And as always, this is D to the B signing off. Bye, everyone.